What up, guys? The Bench Buddies are back with our Week 7 college football preview and picks for the biggest games of the week. As always, I got Ty joining me in our college analyst. So we got college football, hitting its peak. We got college basketball. Our preseason video will be coming out shortly, so stay tuned for that. And to do that, you got to hit that subscribe button down below to get to 200 subscribers, where we'll be doing an autographed item giveaway. But before we get into our video here, we got to go and look at last week's picks. And for once, I actually beat Ty by a good margin too, but that's mostly due to, in part, of some upsets that really came through for me, or just, some straight pick'em games. But Ty, out of these games that, you either won or lost, which one kind of surprised you the most?
I was very surprised by UCLA. I just didn't really buy into them going into that game, but you got to give them a lot of props now. That's a really big win, two in a row for them, beating ranked teams. So I think they deserve a lot of respect. And I would say Tennessee as well. Obviously, I picked against them, and they just went in there and blew out LSU. So two teams that I wasn't quite sold on, but now I am.
And I think for me, a cause and concern is that USC program. They are 6-0, they're looking good, but it seems like they're squeaking by. And, they did beat Washington State by a decent margin, but it just doesn't seem like they're really being able to take control of games when they really need to, and they really should. But they have a tough test this week, as we'll get into that later. But our first game, we got our Wolverines, number 5 in the nation, versus 10 Penn State coming in. All the anticipations around Big Noon kickoff is coming. They're honoring the 97 team, the champions. Aiden Hutchinson's going to be there honoring his award. Lloyd Carr is going to be there. So this is a huge gathering for Michigan. And they also have their maize out. So unbiased pick, I really like that Penn State +7 right now, if I'm going to be completely honest. I think 7 points is a little too much for Michigan, but I'm going to go with the over as well. I think that both of these teams really don't know what to expect on defense, because these teams have really not played a excellent scoring offense like both of these teams. But of course, I gotta stick with my Wolverines. You can see the autographed jerseys in the background. I can't, not pick Michigan here at home, and especially in their maize out.
Yeah, both of these teams can run the ball really well. Obviously, Michigan has Blake Corum, one of the best running backs in the country. So it's going to come down to who can throw the ball better. And I think that's definitely Michigan. Obviously, they have J.J. McCarthy and a loaded wide receiver room. And Penn State's O-line is going to be the turning point of this game. I think Michigan's D-line has been getting home the last few weeks, and Penn State's O-line really struggles. So I see Michigan's D-line eating again this week, and I think that'll be the difference, and they'll get the win.
And another game, if you're into the Big 12, you got Kansas coming off of their first loss of the year, going on the road to face Oklahoma, who, well, pretty much had their biggest embarrassment in probably program history, just because it's that Red River Showdown and you can't even score. And to the fact that you gave up 49 as well, which is just the most Texas has ever scored in that series. So just nothing went their way. So obviously, this is a good redeeming week for them. But I think it's a good redeeming week for Kansas, because you got Jalen Daniels now announced out for the year, but their backup came in last week, threw for 4 touchdowns, really put them in a good position to win, and really didn't miss a beat. And I'm liking that. I think if we're going to go down to it, I would probably just take the Kansas spread here, because I think Oklahoma will win. But, if I'm already going that far and taking the spread, I got to go with the Jayhawks money line.
Yeah, I think if Dylan Gabriel plays, which it sounds like he's trending towards playing, I don't think that Kansas defense is going to be able to hold up against Oklahoma. I know they put up a goose egg last week, but Gabriel was out. They got down really big early, and after that, the wheels just came off. But I still think there's a lot of talent there on that offense, and Oklahoma playing at home. I mean, I know Kansas is 5-1, but if you lose at home to Kansas, there's going to be a lot of panic there in Norman, if there isn't already. So I think they do bounce back and get the win.
And a very good Big Ten game that will probably represent one side of the conference, more than likely. You got the Golden Gophers and Fighting Illini. And I think if you're going in the beginning of the year, you're thinking, okay, it's probably either Wisconsin or Iowa, and maybe an outside chance of Northwestern. And here you are, and you got two teams that really are shocking everyone in the Big Ten. And to a point, this is pretty much both of these teams' Super Bowl this point in the year. If Illinois can win, which I think they will, just because Lovie Smith's got him going the right way, I think he's finally turning that program around. And this is kind of the biggest win that he would get if he does so at home against Minnesota. and I think they do squeak this one out in a very low scoring game.
Yeah, for me, it just comes down to both of these teams have a great running back with Mo Ibrahim and Chase Brown, but Minnesota has the far better quarterback in Tanner Morgan. I think that's all the difference in this game. They both have a great defense, both have a great running back, but Minnesota is not going to be a one-dimensional team, so I think they'll be able to throw the ball just enough to win this game.
And moving to the only team that is winless this year, you got the Colorado Buffaloes, which 2 years ago, this team was almost a top 10 team with LaVisca Chenault, and it's just the whole anticipation around them. But here they are finding themselves 0-5, going against an okay Cal team. But I mean, I got to go with Cal. I don't think Colorado has anything to offer in this game.
Yeah, there's not much to say here. Colorado sucks. I mean, there's no nice way to put it. They are terrible. I think they will go 0-12, unfortunately for them. Just Mel Tucker leaving that program in ruins, and it continues this week with a home loss.
And then at 3:30, probably the second biggest game to us, at least. You got Alabama, Tennessee, and this is probably the biggest game that someone will have Alabama on the ropes. If Bryce Young plays, which I think he's trending towards playing, I think this could be, maybe a one-sided game, honestly, if they can really click and escape what they did from last week. If they can erase anything but play a clean game, kick all their field goals and make them, I think Alabama can win by a double digits here. But something about playing in Knoxville against an undefeated Tennessee team that has tons of hope right now. I just got to go with the Vols here. I just like it. Their quarterback, was it Daniels, right? Or Hooker, Hendon Hooker is a Heisman candidate right now. And if he puts up, I'd say what, 4 touchdowns, so 28. If they put up at least 28 on this Alabama team and get the win, then there's no way he is definitely not in that conversation.
Yeah, I do think this is going to be a shootout. I actually like the over here. Alabama's defense has looked they haven't struggled really this year if you look at their scores, but they've looked beatable at times, and I think that'll continue this week. Hooker will be able to have a big game again, but that Alabama offense against the Tennessee defense, I think they're going to have a huge day, and Tennessee will just be playing catch up the whole game, and they won't be able to sustain it. So I think Alabama gets out of there with a win and a shootout.
And then another Big 12 matchup, Battle of the Undefeated. It's probably the third best game in our opinion. You got Oklahoma State going on the road to an undefeated TCU. And TCU, surprised me last week, beating Kansas on the road. And this is where I think they have the hangover game. Obviously a lot of anticipation around last week's game. And now they get a huge game at home. And I think the script is going to be flipped on them. It'll be a close game with Oklahoma State coming out on top.
Yeah, TCU coming off a huge win. Everyone's telling them how good they are right now, but they really had to scrape that one out. Uh, again, Kansas was 5-0, but it's still Kansas. They won 2 games last year. How good really is that team that they just scraped one out against? And Oklahoma State, they've just proven numerous times that they can win big games. So I think they do it again here.
And a big ACC game. So you got a lot of big games now that this week, and you got to like what you're seeing here in Syracuse. I think probably one of the most underrated teams in the nation. And if you get this win at home in the Carrier Dome against a NC State team, which everyone thought could be a top 10 team this year, you got to be at least almost in the category for a top 10, just because, the team that they'd be playing should be kind of in the same spot as Syracuse is with, no losses. And if you get this point in the ACC 6-0, you got to be doing something right. And I think that the Orange can really do that this week.
Yeah, Syracuse, I'm surprised they're favored in this game. I know they're playing at home. I know they're 5-0, but they really had to scrape out a couple wins at their or on their home field. So I'm a little surprised they're favored. NC State plays really good defense. They're coming off a big win, and I think they keep their momentum going and shut down Syracuse here and get the win.
And we got your Broncos, coming off a very bad loss last week to Eastern Michigan. But can they flip the script this week? I'm thinking probably not, but I think I gotta show my bias here and take Western because it is at home and it is a, MAC game. Luckily, it's not a Tuesday, Wednesday night game, and I think that's benefits Western here. I do like the over though. No matter who wins this game, the over I think will for sure hit.
Yeah, it's Max, and the overs usually hit. And if there's one thing about MAC football, one week to the next, a team can just take a complete 180. One team can get
Mhm.
blown out by Eastern Michigan like we saw with Western, turn around and win a game by 40. You just never know. So I know Western played horrible last week. From what we've seen, that usually has no impact on the next game. And I think that continues in the Broncos get a much needed win. This is basically a must win here.
And at 4, we got Wisconsin going on the road to Michigan State, who got absolutely throttled last week to Ohio State. And if you're Michigan State, this is a must-win game. At this point in the season, you don't want to be 2-5 and pretty much have to win, win out to get to a bowl game. And I think they're going to pull off the upset here at home. I like this matchup for Peyton Thorne. Wisconsin's defense has been stingy at times, but they've had some big gaps, and I think this is a game for him to really mature and limit his, turnover problems. And if they can do that, I think they can walk out with a victory.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, you got to tell yourself, hey, we paid this guy $95 million, that being Mel Tucker. At some point, you got to right the ship if you're Michigan State. This feels like the game they can do it, even though they're big underdogs at home. I think they'll be able to throw the ball. The offense started clicking a little bit last, even though they got blown out. And Wisconsin likes to run the ball. And if you're going to beat Michigan State, we know the blueprint is to throw it. And I don't think Wisconsin's a team that's just going to sling it the whole game. So I think the style of play benefits Michigan State here, and they get a win.
Moving over to the nightcap. To start it off, we got LSU at Florida, which should be a great game of the 4-2s in the SEC. Looking to really rebound from the last month, I would say. They kind of struggled. Some games, questionable games they've played, but then they've also played some really good games against, Tennessee for one. And I think this is a game where that kind of experience helps them because they've been in close games late, where LSU, you saw last week, get absolutely throttled by Tennessee. And just if you're betting on close games, as you can see the spread there, you got to go with Florida.
Yeah, for me, this is a coin flip game. I mean, both of these teams have been very inconsistent this year. You don't really know what you're getting from week to week out of these teams. So I'm just going to go with the home team, the Gators. Neither of these quarterbacks have been consistent at all, but Richardson has been slightly better than Daniels for LSU. So I'm going with Florida here in a close one.
At 7:30, a game that I am very surprised on that line with 3.5 favored for Clemson. I am going to go with the upset in Florida State for the Seminoles. So this week, I'm really big on these Florida teams here. I like the upset because Clemson, if you're going to beat them, you got to beat them at your place. You can't go into Clemson and win. I think it's like 38 games in a row they've won at home. And, we saw Clemson was on the ropes to Wake Forest this year and escaped with a close overtime victory. And Florida State, they're coming off of 2 straight losses, playing some close games, and maybe this one goes in their favor, and I think that's going to happen.
Yeah, this is a tough one for Clemson. I don't know if I see Florida State making the big plays late in the game. We saw just last week. They definitely should have won that game against NC State and threw it away at the end. I just think Clemson, with all that experience and big games that they have, they'll be able to make enough plays at the end of the game and get the win. Even in a tough environment at Florida State, I think they'll still get out of there with a win.
In a big SEC game, you got Mississippi State going to Kentucky, and the 7-point spread for Mississippi State really makes it seem like Will Levis is not going to be playing in this one. And if that's the case, their backup did okay last week. We saw how that resulted in, and I got to go with Mississippi State on the road with Will Rogers leading the way.
Yeah, like you said, Levis looks like he's going to be out, and that offense is really finding its groove for Mississippi State. I think it continues here, and Kentucky really just did nothing on offense against South Carolina last week. Now they're playing a better team, so I just don't see any way Kentucky gets this win.
And at 8, you have USC, who's undefeated, going on the road to Utah, who is surprisingly 4-2 at this point in the season. And I'm going with the Trojans on the road, and here's why. One, they've been playing some really close games, squeaking out a lot of them. And 2, this Utah team, it just seems like they can't finish at end of games. And if that's all you're looking at here, teams who can finish and teams that give it away at the end, you got to go with USC here. And plus, I think the quarterback comparison with Caleb Williams might be a little better than Cameron Rising. And just the big playability, I think, is what really elevate me to take USC. Just because of that big play, they could score a 70-yarder at any point in this game.
Yeah, I said in the rankings video, this is a must win for Utah with the expectations they had at the start of the season. and they seem like a completely different team on their home field in the last few years. I think that continues here. And Caleb Williams, he has struggled a lot against good defenses like Utah. I think it was the Baylor game last year. He ended up getting benched, just couldn't do anything. So I think he'll struggle a little bit more in this game, and Utah's going to get a big home win. USC's been really scraping out some close wins. I think it comes back to bite them here.
And a very underrated ACC game if you're, looking at possibly who the top teams can play in the conference championship. You might want to look at this one. UNC, a very quiet 5-1. Obviously, the departure of Sam Howell last year and all those expectations were pretty much thrown out the window. And here they are still competing, getting good wins. And you got Duke, who kind of was in the same situation last year, a pretty solid team, and they're 4-2 at this point. Normally this is a basketball rivalry game. Well, take it to football here. I have North Carolina going on the road.
Yeah, huge game here. You got North Carolina going in for Coach K's last game at Cameron Indoor, except this is football. So not quite the same magnitude here, but still a big rivalry. And I'm going with North Carolina. I think their offense is going to have a huge day. Defense won't stop anyone, as always, but it won't matter because they'll just score a ton of points and get the win.
And our last game on the docket, we got Washington State, Oregon State, a game with two teams really kind of reeling from a hot start and cooling down. And I don't want to say it's a must win, but it feels like it's a must win if you want to keep up in this year's Pac-12 title race. And I got to go with Oregon State at home. They've been playing better at home than Washington State has been playing on the road. If this was probably flip the script, I'd probably go Washington State at home just because it's one of those games where the home team, has that environment. And especially a Pac-12 game starting at 6 p.m. out there, out west, pretty much a night game, and those get really rowdy out there.
Yeah, this is a weird game. I'm just going with the home team. These almost feel like the same team to me. Both 4-2, both have played pretty well against good teams, but have two losses and not a crazy good win. Both play good defense, okay offense. I'm just going to go with the home team in Oregon State, but might as well just flip a coin if you're betting this game.
And that's gonna be it for our video this week. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button. Get to 200 subscribers to be entered into our giveaway. But until next week's video, Bench Buddies are out.
She never called back.